I never thought I'd be the kind of woman who would have an affair. I'm the one who remembers the kids' vaccination appointments, who knows which bin to put out on recycling day, who buys almond milk for her husband even though she doesn't drink it herself. I've always done what's right. And maybe that's exactly how I lost myself. Somewhere in the 20-plus years of doing things the right way. My name is Lisa. I'm 47 years old and live in the suburbs of Portland, Oregon, where neighbors wave at each other more out of habit than warmth, and life runs on routine like a metronome. I have 2 kids, one in college, the other already moved out. My husband, Mark, is an engineer. He's a good man. Honest, dependable, and utterly boring. It's not that he didn't try. Mark is the kind of man who never forgets birthdays, always gets the oil changed on time, and thinks a quick hug at breakfast is enough to count as intimacy. We sleep in the same bed but with our backs turned. He snores softly. I lie awake, listening to time ticking through my chest. Some nights, I stare at the ceiling for hours. Not because I'm worried or anxious, but because I no longer remember what it feels like to want anything. I was disappearing. Not in the physical sense. I still had thick hair, decent skin, and a figure that hadn't entirely betrayed me. But in the mirror, I saw a woman who wasn't seen anymore. Not touched. Not desired. And then one rainy March afternoon, after a routine checkup, my doctor looked at me and said, "Lisa, you're showing signs of chronic stress. I recommend you try yoga. Not for your body, for your mind." I laughed at the time. Yoga? I'd never stepped foot on a yoga mat. Never worn leggings in public. But I was exhausted in a way that sleep couldn't fix, so I nodded. The next day, I walked into my first yoga class, with a brand new mat and a heart that felt older than my years. The studio was tucked inside a small brick building, and it smelled like lavender and eucalyptus. Soft music played, the lights were low, and then, I saw him. Jaden. He stood at the front of the room, adjusting a speaker. He was tall, maybe 6 feet 1 inch, broad shoulders, toned arms beneath a black tank top. His dark brown hair was messy in a deliberate kind of way, like he didn't care, but somehow still looked effortlessly put together. But it wasn't his body that stopped me. It was his eyes. They were quiet, understanding, deep like a lake at dawn. He looked up and our eyes met, and I felt something flutter inside me, something I thought had died. "Welcome to class," he said. His voice was warm and low, not trying to impress, just real. I sat at the back, feeling self-conscious about every inch of my body. I've never been the sexy type. I'm the kind who picks bras for support, not lace. But that class, even though I couldn't hold a plank for more than 10 seconds, and nearly collapsed during downward dog, I felt alive in a way I hadn't in years. Jaden moved through the class, gently correcting posture and alignment. When he got to me, he placed a hand on my lower back, light, steady. "Engage your core, that's it." His voice brushed against my ear like velvet. I shivered, not from cold. I didn't tell Mark much about the class. Just said it was nice. But that night, when he reached over me to grab the remote, not to hold my hand, just to change the channel, I flinched. Because I was thinking about Jaden. The next week, I went back. This time I got there early, picked a spot closer to the front. Jaden smiled when he saw me. "How did it feel after your first session?" I fumbled through a response. He nodded patiently, like a man who was used to women rediscovering themselves in his presence. Week after week, I went back. And week after week something changed. He started remembering my name, my breathing, my body. His hand lingered a second longer when he adjusted my posture. His gaze held mine for a moment too long in the mirror. I began wearing leggings that hugged a bit tighter. A touch of tinted lip balm. Not for him, I told myself, just to feel pretty again. But the truth? I was drawn to him. And I hated myself for it. Jaden seemed to know, without words, without flirting. He never crossed a line. But he never backed away either. Every time our eyes locked, it felt like I was standing on the edge of something dangerous. Then one day, he asked if I wanted to book a private session, a one-on-one to improve technique. I hesitated, then said yes. That afternoon, the studio was quiet. Just me and him. The lighting was softer, the music lower. The air felt warmer, or maybe that was just me. "Ready?" he asked, stretching beside me. "Ready for what?" I whispered. He smiled. "To listen to your body." During downward dog, he stood behind me, adjusting my hips with both hands. My breath caught in my throat. Every part of me was buzzing. My mind screamed, "This is wrong." But my body said more. When the session ended, I was drenched in sweat and something else. Something electric and unspoken. Jaden handed me a water bottle. His fingers brushed mine. We locked eyes. Neither of us said a word. But everything had changed. I don't remember how I got home after that private session. My head was blank, but my heart was pounding like a war drum. I could still feel Jaden's fingertips on my skin, at my waist, on my shoulders, at the inside of my wrist. Invisible marks that tingled long after they were gone. That night, I took a longer shower than usual. Standing under the hot water, letting it run over my chest, I closed my eyes and let myself remember. The way he adjusted my hips, the way his breath skimmed the back of my neck. One hand on my lower back, the other hovering just above my pelvis, guiding, correcting. But oh God, it felt like he was caressing me. For the first time in years, I touched my own body not for cleansing or out of habit, but because I wanted to. I was hungry. I ate. I needed. When Mark came to bed, pulling the covers over himself without a word, his back to me, distant and predictable, I just lay there staring at the ceiling, swallowed in guilt and longing. The next day, I told myself I wouldn't go back, that I'd make up an excuse, errands, a headache. But by 4 p.m., my body had already made the decision for me. I was in the car, driving to the studio, as if pulled by a string wrapped around my ribs. Jaden spotted me the moment I walked in. He didn't smile wide. He never did. But the corners of his lips curved just enough to make my knees feel loose. "Hi, Lisa," he said, voice deep, warm as dusk. I laid my mat closer to the front. He walked by, bent to pick up a yoga block, and the back of his hand brushed my ankle. Just a flicker of contact, but it lit me up like a live wire. He didn't apologize. Just glanced at me, steady and unbothered, like he knew. During class, he hovered around me more than usual. When I leaned into triangle pose, his hand slid gently down my side, pausing at the top of my hip bone. "Don't hold your breath," he murmured. His hand stayed there just a second too long. When I moved into low lunge, he stepped behind me. One hand cupped my knee, the other slid slowly up the outside of my thigh, guiding my hip into proper alignment. His chest was close to my back, so close I could feel the warmth radiating off him. His breath touched the edge of my ear, and when his palm pressed lightly against my lower belly, I nearly gasped. I bit the inside of my cheek. He knew. I knew he knew. After class, he stood near the door as students filtered out. When it was my turn, he didn't speak at first. Just watched me with eyes that didn't blink. "You're improving every week," he said at last. "If you're interested, I could help with some deeper postures. We'd need to do it privately, though. It's safer that way." I didn't say yes out loud. I just nodded. And just like that, another private session was scheduled. I didn't lie to Mark. But I didn't tell him the truth either. Just said I was taking an advanced session. The studio was even quieter that day. Rain tapped softly on the skylight. The room smelled of sandalwood and vanilla, warm, rich, comforting. The mats were closer than before. I could feel the heat of him before he even said a word. "We're going to work on some hip openers today," he said, voice low. "The hips hold emotion. This might feel intense, but I've got you." I nodded, heart racing. We started with pigeon pose, one leg folded in front, the other extended behind. A vulnerable posture. A raw one. Jaden knelt beside me, sliding a hand beneath my belly to lift my hips gently. The other hand pressed into my lower back. He leaned close, lips near my ear. Breathe into it, he said softly. Feel where it hurts. I exhaled hard. And then a sound slipped out of me, soft, almost a moan. There, he whispered. That's it. I didn't realize his hand had moved, from my hip to my thigh, tracing along the edge of my glutes. He wasn't groping. It wasn't crude. It was precise, intimate, electric. When we transitioned into supine twist, he guided me down slowly, one hand under my back, the other on my side. As I rolled onto my back, I saw him looking, not like a trainer checking posture, like a man admiring a woman. I didn't shrink away. In fact, I arched a little more. His hands returned, this time slower. From my ribcage down to my waist, he guided my movement. And then, accidentally or not, his hand skimmed the underside of my breast. Neither of us said a word. How does that feel? He asked, voice husky. I don't know, I whispered. Jaden didn't smile, didn't move. Instead, he lifted one hand and let the back of his finger trace along my jawline, then down my neck, stopping at my collarbone. I trembled, not from fear, from wanting. May I? He asked quietly. Touch you? I nodded. It was raining again that day. A soft, steady drizzle that clung to my skin like a whisper. The kind of rain that made everything feel slower, more intimate. Jaden's class was full, body stretched and twisted, breath rising and falling in rhythm. But I wasn't present. My mind was somewhere else. Or maybe it was everywhere. All I could feel was the heat of that last session, the memory of his hand on my hip, the whisper of his breath near my neck. The way my body responded like it had been waiting years to be touched. Near the end of class, as I lay in Savasana, still open, vulnerable, I felt movement near me. Then a note, folded in half, slid quietly beside my hand. I opened one eye. Meet me. Down the hall. Staff bathroom. Now. No name. No signature. But I knew that handwriting. I knew that command. My heart launched into a sprint. I rolled up my mat with hands that shook slightly, ignoring the chatter of the other students. I didn't even look at him as I walked past the front desk and into the hallway. The staff bathroom was down a narrow corridor. The door was cracked open. I stepped in. The room smelled like eucalyptus and soap. Clean. Sterile. Quiet. And then I saw him. Jaden was leaning against the sink, arms crossed. His eyes met mine with a look that sent a jolt straight between my legs. The door clicked shut behind me. Neither of us spoke. He took 2 steps forward. I could barely breathe. His hand came up slowly. Fingers grazing my jawline, my neck, tracing down my collarbone like he was memorizing me by touch. I tilted my head back, my lips parting slightly. You came, he murmured. You told me to, I breathed. That was all it took. His mouth crashed into mine, and it wasn't soft. It was hungry, desperate. Like all the restraint we'd both been clinging to had snapped. His hands were everywhere, gripping my waist, sliding down my back, pulling me closer until there was no space left between us. I could feel every hard inch of him pressing into my belly. I gasped as he lifted me effortlessly and set me on the edge of the sink. My legs parted instinctively, wrapping around his hips. His hands gripped the underside of my thighs, fingers digging into my flesh as his mouth moved to my neck, sucking, tasting, biting. You drive me crazy, he growled against my skin. I can't stop thinking about you, about how your body moves, how you moan when I touch you. I couldn't think. My head fell back against the mirror. One of his hands slid up under my shirt, palm hot against my skin. He found my breast, thumb circling the peak until I whimpered into his mouth. And then he paused. Tell me to stop, he said, voice hoarse. I looked at him, eyes wild, hair damp from sweat and rain. My heart pounded in my chest like a drumline. "Don't you dare," I whispered. He groaned, a deep animal sound, and his hand moved lower, fingers slipping beneath the waistband of my leggings. I gasped, arching into him. The cold of the sink beneath me only made his touch feel hotter, more electric. He kissed me again, slower this time, his tongue tracing the seam of my lips, exploring, teasing. His fingers moved with a rhythm that made my hips buck against him. Every nerve in my body lit up. I clutched at his shoulders, my nails leaving marks through the fabric of his shirt. "You're so wet," he whispered against my ear. "Do you even know what you do to me?" I couldn't speak. I could only feel. My body was on fire. My pulse throbbed in my ears. And when I came, I bit down on his shoulder to muffle the cry. My whole body shaking, breath ragged, chest rising and falling like waves in a storm. But he wasn't done. He pulled back just long enough to yank off his shirt, revealing a body carved from tension and heat. Then he lowered himself to his knees, pulling my leggings down slowly, like unwrapping a gift. His eyes never left mine. And then his mouth was on me. I nearly screamed. One hand braced on the mirror, the other tangled in his hair. I lost myself completely. He devoured me, with a kind of worship I had never known. Tongue, lips, teeth. Every part of him working to unravel me. I came again, harder this time. My thighs clamped around his head. My back arched. And when I looked down, I saw him smiling against my skin. "God, you taste like sin," he said, standing again. I reached for his belt. There was no room, no time, but none of that mattered. I pulled him toward me. He groaned as I wrapped my hand around him, stroking slowly, deliberately, watching his face twist with pleasure. His hips jerked toward me, desperate for more. "Are you sure?" he asked again, voice rough. I didn't answer. I just pulled him into me. The mirror fogged with heat. The sink creaked beneath us. And for a moment, the world narrowed to breath and skin, and the rhythm of two people losing themselves. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't slow. It was everything we hadn't said, everything we'd been holding back, released in gasps and moans and fingers digging into flesh. My name on his lips, his name in my throat, our bodies slamming together in a frenzy that bordered on madness. And when we both came, it was violent, beautiful, shattering. He held me after, his forehead pressed to mine, both of us panting, sweaty, stunned. I laughed, a breathless, wild sound. "I can't believe we just did that," I whispered. He smiled, kissed me gently this time. "Neither can I." We left separately, quietly, but the taste of him lingered in my mouth. The feel of him inside me haunted my every step. I walked back to my car in the rain, soaked to the bone and smiling like a woman who had just remembered who she was. Alive, desired, powerful. And this was only the beginning. I came home just before midnight. Jaden's scent still clung to my skin, a mix of cedarwood, sweat, and sex. I changed in the dark, slipped under the covers beside Mark. He stirred slightly but didn't wake. I stared up at the ceiling, heart pounding. I had cheated. This wasn't a kiss. This wasn't a mistake. I had gone to another man's home, peeled off every layer, gave him everything, willingly, unapologetically. And the worst part, I wanted to do it again. Again and again. 3 days later I went back. Jaden's message was brief. 8 p.m., doors unlocked. I arrived wearing a tight black dress, no underwear. My heart raced as I stepped into his apartment. Jaden was in the kitchen, wearing a white button-down shirt partly undone, a glass of wine in his hand. Warm, amber light made his skin glow. His eyes dragged over me like he wanted to rip the dress off with his teeth. "Hey there," he said with a slow, wicked smile. I didn't answer. I walked straight toward him, took the glass from his hand, sipped, and placed it on the counter. I pressed my hand against his chest, trailing lower. I could feel his abs tighten beneath the thin fabric. His breath hitched. He leaned down. Still nothing underneath that dress? I raised an eyebrow. Disappointed. Not even a little, he said, smirking. I'm just trying not to take you right here. I grabbed his hand and led him to the bedroom. I didn't even make it to the bed. He spun me and pressed me against the wall. His hand slid up my thigh, lifting the hem of my dress until my ass was bare. His fingers traced lazy, teasing circles, and I shivered. He lifted one leg, pinning it around his waist, pressing the hardness of him against my center. I missed you, he whispered, voice low and dangerous. 3 days and I couldn't stop thinking about this. Not a minute went by I didn't think of you. I breathed, trembling from the heat of his breath at my ear. He didn't wait. I heard the zipper, the rustle of clothes. Then he thrust into me, deep, sure, relentless. I bit down on my lip to stop myself from screaming. My hands braced against the wall, my knees nearly buckling with each thrust. You feel so good, he growled. So what? So damn tight. He pulled my hair gently, making me look back at him. His eyes were wild with desire, locked on mine. We didn't stop after that. After the first rough round against the wall, he carried me to bed. Slower this time. Tender. The bedside lamp cast a golden halo on our skin. He laid between my legs, eyes drinking me in. Then slowly, so slowly, he slid into me again. I gasped, overwhelmed by the fullness, the intimacy. The way he moved like we'd done this 1,000 times. He kissed me, softer than I'd expected. Deep. Lingering. Like he was savoring every second. You have no idea what you do to me, he murmured, stroking my hair. You've ruined me, I whispered. He trailed his fingers down my back, slid them into my hair, and pulled just enough to make me gasp again. He quickened the pace, hips slamming into mine, the slap of skin echoing in the silence. I clung to him, nails raking down his back. My breath came in broken gasps. He whispered my name like a prayer, like a secret he couldn't keep. Say it, he groaned. Say you want me. I want you. I need you, I cried out, unraveling again. He flipped me onto my knees, grabbing my hips. He slid back inside, deeper this time, hitting something primal. I screamed into the pillow, a mix of pain and absolute bliss. His hand reached around, stroking me in rhythm with his thrusts. I shattered. And this time, he came with me, his whole body tensing above mine as we crashed together. We lay tangled in the sheets, his arm draped over my waist, his breath warm against my neck. For a while we said nothing. There were no words for what we'd just done. Then in the quiet I asked, are we really going to keep doing this? Jaden didn't answer right away. His hand rubbed slow circles on my back. I can't stop, he said finally. And I don't think you want to. I closed my eyes. He was right. I had crossed the line. And now, every time I returned to his place, I was falling deeper into a fire I didn't want to put out. There's something dangerously thrilling about knowing you could get caught. Jaden knew it. I knew it. And that was exactly why we couldn't stop. It started in his car. We'd just wrapped a sweaty, tension-filled yoga session. I was still in my tight black leggings, hair up in a messy ponytail. And the way he looked at me in the parking lot made my skin prickle. He leaned in through the open window of my SUV and said in a low voice, 5 minutes. Back of the lot. I didn't ask. I didn't think. 5 minutes later, I slid into the passenger seat of his truck. He locked the doors before I could even close mine. And then we were on each other like fire meeting gasoline. He grabbed me by the waist, pulling me into his lap, the gear shift digging into my thigh as he kissed me like he hadn't seen me in months. You drive me insane, he growled, slipping his hand between my legs, right there in broad daylight, just hidden enough behind tinted windows and parked cars. My hips rolled against him without permission. The thrill was intoxicating. The possibility of someone walking by, seeing movement, hearing a moan. He didn't even undress me, just pushed my leggings to the side, ripped open his own fly, and pulled me down onto him. I gasped, clenching the handle above the passenger door as he filled me. Fast, deep, unapologetic. The windows fogged in minutes. His hands were everywhere, gripping my hips, clutching my hair, sliding up under my sports bra to grab my breasts. "You're going to make me scream," I whispered, trying to muffle myself in his neck. "Let them hear," he murmured, pounding harder. "Let them all know who you belong to." Next time was the yoga studio. Late. After hours. We had locked the door, turned off the lights. Only the moonlight slipped in through the windows, casting silver lines across the hardwood floor. He pressed me against the mirrored wall, my reflection fogging as he kissed down my back, peeling off my shirt inch by inch. My bare chest touched the cool glass, a shock against my overheated skin. He knelt behind me, pulling down my leggings slowly, teasingly, while watching me through the mirror. "Do you see what I see?" he whispered. "You desperate, dripping, begging." He slid into me from behind, our eyes locked in the glass. I watched the way his body moved with mine, the muscles in his arms, the flesh of his skin, the danger of being in his place of work, the mirror reflecting every wicked detail. It made me dizzy. Another time, it was a dressing room. We were shopping, or pretending to. I tried on a silky red dress that hugged every curve. He followed me into the room without hesitation. "Take it off," he said. I smirked. "You don't like it? I love it. But I love what's under it more." I let it fall to the floor. Within seconds, he had me lifted against the wall, kissing me like he was starved. I wrapped my legs around him, loving the sharp edge of his stubble against my chest, the weight of him pressing me into the mirror behind us. A small thump outside. Voices. We both froze, breath tangled, hearts pounding. But he didn't stop. He whispered, "Stay quiet," and began to move again. I bit down on his shoulder to keep from crying out. It was reckless. It was wrong. And it was the hottest thing I had ever done in my life. We became addicted to the danger. Jaden would text me during the day. "Meet me in 10. Corner booth." Or, "Parking garage. Level 3. Don't wear panties." We met in hotel elevators, empty stairwells. Once even in the back office of a juice bar. He bent me over the desk while the staff cleaned up out front, blissfully unaware. There was something about the silence, the tension, the way I had to bite my tongue, swallow my moans, dig my nails into his arms to keep from losing control. I became bolder, hungrier. I would walk into his gym with no underwear, just for the thrill of knowing I was ready for him. I started wearing skirts with buttons he could undo in a second. My body was always on alert, aching at the sound of his voice, the brush of his hand. And Jaden? He was an addict too. He craved me the way a man craves oxygen. His eyes darkened every time I entered a room. His hands couldn't stay still. He'd sneak behind me during class, adjust my pose just a little too long, his fingers lingering on my hips, my inner thigh. He'd whisper in my ear, "After this class, you're mine." But with all the heat came the risk. One day, as we tangled in the small bathroom of a cafe, the door barely locked, the faucet still dripping, I heard a knock. Jaden had my leg hooked over his arm, thrusting deep, when the sound jolted us both. "Just a minute," I called, voice trembling. Jaden didn't stop. His eyes dared me to scream. And when I came seconds later, trying to smother the sound with the back of my hand, I saw something change in him. Power, possession, pleasure. When we finally stumbled out of that bathroom, flushed and half-dressed, the barista gave us a look. I smiled. Jaden just winked. But somewhere in the middle of all that danger, all that heat, I began to feel something else. Something deeper. One night, after a long day, we didn't make love in a stairwell or a parked car. We just lay in the back of his truck, under a blanket, watching the stars. His hand rested on my thigh, stroking softly. No urgency, Just comfort. He turned to me and said, I like seeing you like this. Like what? Peaceful. Real. And for the first time in weeks, I wasn't thinking about getting caught. I wasn't thinking about lust. I was thinking about him. His smell. His voice. The way he made me feel, not just sexy but seen. Wanted. Alive. I never meant for it to happen in that room. That room, the heart of our home. The room where I'd once whispered goodnight to my husband. Where our children had crawled in after nightmares. Where I'd sat alone on the edge of the bed during fights, staring at the empty space beside me. It was sacred. Until it wasn't. That night, the house was quiet. My husband was away on a business trip, some conference in Chicago. The kids were at my sister's for the weekend. And I should have felt lonely, guilty, sad maybe, but instead I felt fire in my veins. An ache I could no longer pretend wasn't there. Jaden showed up just after 10 p.m. He wore a dark hoodie, gym shorts, and that look in his eyes, the one that said he was barely hanging on. The second I opened the door, he pulled me into his arms. I melted against him like honey. His mouth found mine hard and hungry. He kicked the door shut behind us, lifting me by the thighs, carrying me through the hallway, not to the guest room, not to the couch, but straight into my bedroom. I should have stopped him. I should have thought about the photos on the nightstand, of our wedding, our kids at Disney. But the truth is, I didn't care. Not in that moment. He laid me down on the bed I'd shared with another man for 17 years. I watched his eyes scan the room. The soft lighting, the pale linens, the scent of lavender still lingering in the sheets. Your husband sleeps here? He asked, voice low. I nodded. Jaden exhaled slowly, his gaze darkening. Then I'm going to F*** you right where he failed you. And he did. God, he did. He pulled my nightgown up over my hips and spread me open like a secret he couldn't wait to taste. His mouth traveled slowly, worshipping, devouring, as if my body was his altar. His tongue teased places my husband hadn't touched in years, drawing moans from my throat I didn't know I still had in me. When he finally slid inside me, it wasn't rough. It wasn't rushed. It was slow, intimate, deep. He held my hands above my head, interlacing our fingers, his forehead pressed against mine. Look at me, he whispered. Let me see what he never bothered to. And I did. I looked into the eyes of a man who wasn't mine, and yet somehow felt like home. We didn't stop at once. We made love again, slower, softer. We lay tangled in the sheets, limbs wrapped around each other, his hand stroking my back in lazy circles. The room smelled like sex and sweat, and something I didn't want to name, guilt. But I shoved it down, burying my face in his chest. I wish this was ours, I murmured. He kissed my forehead. Someday maybe, but someday never came, because morning brought more than sunlight. It brought my husband. I woke up to the sound of a key in the door. Jaden was still asleep, bare-chested, one arm draped over my waist. Panic shot through me like electricity. No. No, no, no. I scrambled out of bed, grabbing my robe, shaking Jaden awake. But it was too late. My husband stood in the doorway, suitcase still in hand. Time stopped. He looked from me to Jaden, the sheets still tangled, the air thick with scent and sin. No one spoke. He didn't scream. He didn't cry. He just looked. And somehow that was worse. I came home early, he finally said. His voice was hoarse, hollow. I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. Jaden sat up, jaw clenched, eyes filled with something I hadn't seen in him before, shame. My husband turned and walked away. The days that followed were a blur of silence and slammed doors. I moved into the guest room. Jaden tried calling. I didn't answer. I couldn't. The weight of what I'd done, not just the betrayal but where I'd done it, crushed me. Every time I walked past that bedroom I saw him. My husband. Standing in the doorway with his heart breaking in real time. I ruined something sacred. Not just the marriage. The home. Jaden and I met one last time. A quiet bench at the park, hidden from view. He reached for my hand. I let him take it. I love you, he said. I know, I whispered. But love doesn't fix what I broke. I still dream of him sometimes. Of his hands. His breath. The way he made me feel alive again. But when I wake up, it's not the pleasure that haunts me. It's the silence. The empty bed. The photo frame turned face down on the nightstand. And the memory of a choice I'll never be able to unmake.